ABC General Hospital Spoilers revealed that Willow had never felt power like this before. And the dangerous truth was that she liked it. As Willow stood over Drew, watching him trapped inside the prison of his own silent, motionless body, she realized he was the only person left she could fully control without resistance, without negotiation, without fear of betrayal. The world outside was becoming more dangerous by the hour, custody battles, court threats, the collapse of her public image, and the rising suspicion about her involvement in the shooting. But inside this house, inside this room, she held absolute dominance over the one man who once believed he was her protector. Now Drew was nothing more than a breathing hostage, a body she could maneuver like a pawn, a tool she could reshape to fit her shifting needs. His inability to speak, to move, to articulate even the simplest warning became Willow's greatest advantage. She knew he could hear her. She knew he could feel everything. And worst of all, she knew he could not stop her. That knowledge hardened her into something unrecognizable, someone who understood that helplessness could be weaponized. With every passing day, Willow leaned deeper into the growing chaos around her, manipulating Drew's silence to secure her own safety and expand her leverage in the battle she still needed to win. His paralysis was not an obstacle, it was an opportunity. She could speak into his ear about her plans, her fears, even her victories, knowing he was the perfect witness, aware, intelligent, and utterly powerless. And the more she spoke, the more she realized how useful his voiceless presence truly was. She wanted more custody rights, more influence over Wiley and Amelia, more control over Michael, more ways to tilt the narrative in her favor. Drew's condition made him the perfect alibi, the perfect shield, the perfect silent accomplice. No one would suspect a man who couldn't speak. No one would question the caretaker whose presence appeared attentive and nurturing. And no one would imagine the extent of the psychological captivity happening inside the walls of this quiet home. But as Willow tightened her grip on Drew physically, emotionally, strategically, the shadows surrounding her began to thicken, signaling that something much larger was looming beneath the surface. Willow believed she was acting alone, but every reckless decision, every injection, every cruel whisper into Drew's ear was pushing her closer to the influence of someone she had not yet fully seen. Someone who had guided her intentionally or not into believing she deserved more power than she could handle. Someone who had planted the idea that control was her birthright. Someone who was waiting for the moment she spiraled deep enough into darkness that she became the perfect instrument for their own agenda. The more Willow manipulated Drew, the clearer it became that she was both puppet and puppeteer wielding control, while unknowingly being reshaped by a force more cunning than she realized. Her victories came too easily. Her secrets stayed hidden too smoothly. The evidence against her disappeared too conveniently. It was only a matter of time before the truth emerged. Willow was not acting entirely alone. The faceless ally, the one who whispered through the cracks of her anxiety, who nudged her toward darker solutions, who emboldened her the night she stabbed Drew, was preparing to reveal themselves. And when they did, everything Willow had done would pale in comparison to the plans they intended to execute through her. Meanwhile, Drew's consciousness flickered inside his unmoving body like a candle burning in a windstorm. He heard everything. He felt every shift in Willow's tone, every tremor of fear, every surge of arrogance, as she believed she had mastered the nightmare she created. But Drew also sensed something Willow could not, the growing danger surrounding her, the presence lurking just outside her awareness. He felt it in the way she paced the room and the tension in her voice when she thought she was alone, in the way her hands trembled when she unlocked the door after speaking to unseen visitors. He wanted to scream to warn her, to tell her that she was not the predator she imagined, she was prey. And the hunter was getting closer. Willow believed she was winning, but the truth was that every step she took toward control pushed her deeper into someone else's game. The more she dominated Drew, the more vulnerable she became to the influence tightening invisibly around her life. And when the person behind her actions finally appeared, Willow would not be the one holding Drew captive. She would be the one trapped, caught between the consequences of her own choices and the terrifying realization that she had been manipulated from the beginning. Willow thought she had achieved power, but what she really achieved was exposure, vulnerability, and a dangerous dependency on a silence that would not protect her forever. Drew was the key she believed she could control, yet he was also the witness who could destroy her the moment he recovered. And deep down, Willow knew that recovery was coming. Slowly, inevitably, terrifyingly, the danger surrounding her was not decreasing, it was expanding. And when all the pieces came crashing down, Willow would discover the harshest truth of all: she had never been in control. She had only been the first to fall. Willow had no idea when the shift began, when fear turned into dependency, when dependency turned into obedience, and when obedience finally evolved into something far more dangerous. All she knew now was that every choice she made seemed to tighten the invisible grip of the man who controlled her. From the shadows, she believed she was acting for her own survival, protecting her future, securing her freedom. But the truth was far more twisted. She had become an instrument. And the chilling revelation stirring beneath the surface was that her unseen master did not care about her sanity, her safety, or her soul. His real objective lay far beyond her. His eyes were set on those closest to Sunny and Willow, broken in just the right places, had unknowingly become the perfect weapon to strike at them. Slowly, relentlessly, methodically, he guided her toward chaos, letting her think the ideas were her own. As Drew lay trapped in silence, Willow felt a surge of control she had never experienced before. She whispered her plans to him, raged at him when the pressure grew unbearable, and clung to him like he was the only anchor she had left. But the anchor was sinking with her. Drew's paralysis was her greatest advantage. He could witness everything, yet reveal nothing. His helplessness gave her a sense of power that numbed the panic consuming her life. And as the outside world tightened with legal battles, custody threats, and emotional warfare, Willow clung to Drew more fiercely, almost possessively, because he was the only person she could dominate without question. What she failed to understand was that her handler had orchestrated this perfectly. He wanted her isolated. He wanted her desperate. He wanted her dependent on only one person, someone too weak to resist her influence, but too conscious to escape the horror of watching her crumble. And once Willow was cut off from every other source of emotional stability, once all that remained was panic and obedience, her handler began to reveal his true intentions. His voice, calm and cold in her ear during late-night calls she pretended not to remember, spoke of threats lingering around Sunny, of enemies who needed to be dismantled piece by piece. Willow didn't realize he was planting ideas, not warnings. Michael, he said, was becoming careless. Wiley and Amelia were vulnerable. Jacinda was too close for comfort. The danger, he whispered, was growing. And Willow, fragile, reeling, drowning, interpreted those whispers as truth. But the danger was not approaching her family from the outside. Willow herself had become the danger. Each day, she spiraled deeper into the illusion that she was protecting her children. When every move she made was pushing them into greater peril, her handler understood that to destroy Sunny, he could not attack him directly. The only way to break a man like Sunny was to dismantle the people he loved until nothing remained but guilt and rage. Willow, with her fractured mind and rising desperation, was the perfect detonator. All she needed was the right trigger, and so the handler fed her subtle instructions, guiding her emotions like strings tied to a marionette. He told her Michael was preparing to betray her in court. He implied Jacinda was quietly gathering evidence against her. He insinuated that Wiley and Amelia would one day be taken from her unless she acted preemptively. Willow believed every word. Her fear became loyalty. Her loyalty became fanaticism. And fanaticism, he knew, could drive a person to destruction without ever questioning who lit the fuse. Meanwhile, Drew, trapped inside his own body, sensed the shift long before Willow did. He felt the tension in the room when she answered those mysterious calls. He noticed the tremor in her hands when she whispered to herself in the dark. He saw the way her eyes darted toward shadows as if expecting something or someone to emerge. Every instinct in him screamed that Willow was losing control, that she was no longer acting out of fear but out of manipulation. But he could do nothing. His body was a cage. His voice was gone. His warnings drowned inside him like screams underwater. And as Willow's obsession with protecting herself intensified, the handler tightened his influence. He instructed her to watch Michael more closely, to question his motives, to test Jacinda's loyalty, to monitor the children's routines. He wrapped paranoia around her like a cloak until she could no longer distinguish danger from imagination. Willow did not realize she was being shaped into a weapon with a single purpose: strike Sunny where it hurts, most through the people he has sworn to protect. Her role was simple: devastate Michael emotionally, endanger Wiley and Amelia in ways that could not be traced, corner Jacinda until she disappeared from the picture. And once chaos erupted, once the Corinthos family shattered under the weight of fear and confusion, the handler would step out of the darkness, ready to finish what Willow unknowingly began. The tragedy was that Willow believed she was fighting for her life. She thought she was preventing betrayal, protecting her children, controlling the narrative before it swallowed her. She thought she was preventing danger when in reality she was walking straight into the heart of it, dragging Michael, Drew, Wiley, Amelia, and Jacinda with her. The more she tried to seize control, the more she lost it. The more she acted out of desperation, the more her handler tightened his grip. And as the final pieces slid into place, as Willow unknowingly executed the early stages of a plan far bigger than her, a chilling truth emerged. She was not the mastermind. She was the sacrifice. And the moment her handler reveals himself, Willow will understand that the danger she felt pressing in from all sides was never meant to destroy her children, or Michael, or even Drew. It was meant to destroy her. Willow's hatred for Drew had been growing in silence long before the night she attacked him. But now that he lay paralyzed and trapped in his own unresponsive body, that hatred had room to expand into something far more toxic and far more dangerous. In her mind, Drew had failed her when she needed him most, failed to protect her, failed to defend her, failed to help her escape the legal and emotional labyrinth tightening around her life. Every time she looked at him now, she no longer saw a husband or a partner. She saw a reminder of everything she blamed him for, everything she believed he had ruined for her. And because he could no longer speak, no longer argue, no longer insist on his version of the truth, Willow felt emboldened to let every suppressed resentment bleed out freely. She whispered to him not out of affection, but out of cruelty, letting him hear the full weight of what she thought of him, knowing he could not respond. It thrilled her in a way she didn't dare admit. It empowered her in a way that terrified even her, but she could not stop. Each day, Willow drifted further from the person she once had been, spiraling into a version of herself shaped entirely by fear, anger, and the intoxicating rush of control. And as she watched Drew suffer, unable to move or fight back, she began to justify everything she had done and everything she would do next. This shift marked a new transformation inside her, a darkness hardening into purpose. Drew's pain became fuel. His silence became opportunity. The longer she held him captive inside his broken body, the more confident Willow grew that she was justified in punishing him for every perceived betrayal. She told herself he deserved it. She told herself he had brought this fate upon himself. She told herself she was simply reclaiming the power he had stolen from her by failing to support her when the world turned against her. But beneath those justifications, something more frightening was happening. Willow was beginning to enjoy the destruction. What started as emotional release quickly evolved into deliberate cruelty. She watched his shallow breaths, his struggling eyes, the flicker of awareness he still possessed, and instead of pity, she felt triumph. The more helpless he became. The more she believed she was finally winning a battle she never admitted she was fighting. Willow started testing the boundaries of her control, adjusting his medication doses, delaying his care, speaking to him about the things she planned while he lay powerless to intervene. She treated his paralysis like a puzzle, figuring out just how much he could hear, just how much he could understand, and exactly how much pain she could inflict without ever lifting a hand. And as she pushed him deeper into physical and psychological torment, Willow convinced herself that every moment of his suffering was earned. Drew had failed her, so she would fail him in return. He had not helped her rebuild her life, so she would dismantle his piece by piece. She believed this ending, this slow, suffocating deterioration was the only fate fitting for a man who had never supported her the way she believed he should have. The shock for Drew came not from the pain, but from the realization that Willow's cruelty was not a momentary lapse, it was becoming her identity. She was unraveling, transforming into someone who no longer recognized the line between self-protection and vengeance. And the more she descended into that darkness, the more she felt justified in her actions. Willow's resentment lit a fire inside her, and that fire began to consume everything, not just Drew's safety, but her own sanity. She became unpredictable, volatile, capable of deeper harm than even she understood. What she did next was not calculated, it was instinctual, driven by a desperate need to prove that she had not lost control of her life, even though the reality was the exact opposite. Each cruel choice she made carved her further away from redemption, sinking her into a spiral she could no longer escape. And as Drew lay there helpless witness to the monster she was becoming, Willow convinced herself that this ending, the pain, the silence, the hopelessness, was the justice he deserved. She believed fate was merely finishing the job she had started. But the truth was far more tragic. Willow was not delivering Drew's destiny, she was destroying her own. Yet in her broken, twisted logic, she clung to the belief that his suffering was a necessary offering, a price that needed to be paid so she could reclaim the life she believed she deserved. And in the darkest corners of her mind, Willow knew one thing with chilling certainty: she was not finished with him yet.